Good day, grade 12 learners. Welcome to today's economics lesson. My name is Letiane LG, and this lesson is brought to you by the Free State Department of Education in collaboration with Pagama Research and Development. Grade 12s, today we still continue with our revision for paper 1. We are focusing on macroeconomics as the main topic, but the subtopic there we go to topic 4. And then when we get to topic 4, we find international trade as well as foreign exchange. And therefore, topic for today will be focusing on the foreign exchange market. Okay, it's always important for us to familiarize ourselves with these economic concepts. It means the definition and against the term. Why are we doing that? Because we know that these terminologies are important or they are needed for question 1, which is section A, multiple choice question, match column, as well as economic concepts. And also we need it in section B, especially in the middle questions where we are asked to briefly describe a particular concept. And also, they are important, this concept, because they help us to start a particular section C in terms of the introduction of the essay. So we need to know these concepts. And we usually say part of these concepts are what we call hanging fruits in economics. So therefore, we cannot leave these hanging fruits for us to get our required marks. What we start with, it is the term exchange rate. We say it is the rate at which one currency it is exchanged for another. So here we are looking at what is equivalence of 1 rand to the dollar. So therefore, hence we are saying the exchange rate is a rate at which one currency is exchanged for another. Furthermore, we went to circular flow, and under circular flow, we realized that there are 4 participants there as an open economy. And the 4th participant that was added when you in grade 11 and grade 12, it is the foreign sector, which now opened for international trade. Therefore, what is international trade? It is the exchanging of goods and services across international borders or with other countries. Then again, in circular flow, we understood that these participants, which is the households, the government, the businesses, as well as the foreign sector, they are linked with certain markets. If you can just recall under circular flow, we remember the factor market, where the factors of production are traded. And then we remember the goods market, where there's an exchange of goods and services. We included the financial market that is divided into 2, which is the capital market as well as the money market. Then also another market that we included, it is the foreign exchange market. So the foreign exchange market, it is where international currencies are converted or exchanged or traded with others. Grade 12, I repeat, this is where we exchange only currencies. Why? So that it makes it possible for imports and exports to take place. This is not the market for imports and exports, because these imports and exports are still goods and services, which we find them under the goods market. So the foreign exchange market, therefore, it makes it possible for imports and exports to take place. It is a market where currencies of different countries are exchanged. Then also under topic 4, we find a concept there that is called the balance of payment, where we say it's a systematic account of all transactions relating to the flow of goods, services, and other funds between a country and the other countries, or between a country and the rest of the world, depending on how different sources of the textbook puts it, as long as we get a systematic record of all transactions between one country and the rest of the world. That is called balance of payments. Then today's lesson, we're going to be focusing on how does the currency appreciation as well as currency depreciation affect this balance of payments. Okay, which comes to the terminology that is called appreciation. Therefore, here, economists, we are looking at the currency itself, the value of the currency, and mostly we refer to the domestic currency, which is in South Africa, we use ZAR or rands. So we are focusing on that. So when we say appreciation, we are saying it is an increase in the value of the domestic currency relative to other currencies or currencies of different countries, therefore, due to market forces of demand and supply. That is the appreciation. So the key word there, we see an increase in the value of the domestic currency, which is the rand, against the other currencies, of which now we're going to apply further and see how does this currency increase and see how does the currency decrease, of which the next terminology that we are saying, it is the depreciation. Therefore, the depreciation, we are saying it is the decrease in the value of the domestic currency relative to the currencies of other countries due to market forces. Okay? And then here I said, remember, we are looking at the domestic currency here. And when we get to these concepts, grade 12, I usually say, don't be in America while you're in South Africa, or don't be in England while you're in South Africa. That does not happen. What we do, we are in South Africa and we measure ourselves against the other countries. Therefore, we're going to be checking if our currency is appreciating or our currency is depreciating in relation to those other currencies, not the other way around, because that's where it becomes tricky now, where you tend to check if the dollar has appreciated or the dollar has depreciated. It becomes complicated. But if we understand first the domestic currency and how does it operate, it is easy for us then to exchange it and look at in the way which the pound or the dollar works. Okay. Then another concept that we are getting here is the concept that is so close to depreciation, but it is called what? Revaluation. It refers to a calculated decision taken by the central bank. In our case, it will be the SARB, to increase, another way there, the value of the domestic currency in relation to a certain baseline or to a certain foreign currency, therefore. That means this one is a deliberate action taken by the central bank to increase the value of the currency. Unlike the first one with appreciation. With appreciation, we understood that it is due to market forces. But with revaluation, it is because the central banks intervenes in where the currency should be fluctuating. They allow it to fluctuate, but within certain limits. That is revaluation. And then devaluation, it is the deliberate decrease in the value of the domestic currency, and that decision is taken by the central bank or the monetary authorities of a country. So here, it means there's a certain goals that the central bank want to achieve in relation to the way the country performs. So they will still allow the currency to fluctuate, but within certain limits, in a managed manner, when we put it that way. So there will be devaluation based on whatever that they need to achieve. There will be revaluation based on whatever that we need to achieve, of which in our lesson, we're going to be discussing further on what conditions requires revaluation and what conditions requires devaluation of the currency. And then free floating exchange rate system, it is one of the systems that is used in South Africa, where we are saying this, the system where the exchange rate, it is determined purely by market forces of demand and supply. So this is where the currency depreciates and appreciates without government intervention. That is called what? That is called a free float exchange rate system. Managed exchange rate system here, I think the term says it. It is allowed to fluctuate, like I mentioned. It is also known as the dirty float exchange rate system. We're going to talk about why we call it the dirty exchange rate system, where because there is an intervention by the central bank. That means it does not give us the pure market forces or pure market participation. There is a certain intervention by the Reserve Bank or the central bank of that particular country because of the certain goals that they want to achieve. Looking at the economic growth of the country, the inflation of a country, etc. Then another exchange rate system, it is a fixed exchange rate system, where we said sometimes we use a standard gold that is backed by the value of the currency to a certain amount of that particular gold. Where we say this is the system in which the government determines the exchange rate for a very short period of time based on another currency. For example, a dollar. Okay, so we'll put it at the fixed rate. Doesn't matter what happens to the economy. If in pure market, it would appreciate or depreciate, but with a fixed one, it remains the same based on that particular period that the central bank places there. It does not change on the forces of demand and supply or on the market forces. So those are the three exchange rate systems that we are having. Okay, so far, revaluation, a deliberate increase in the value of the currency by the central bank, and then devaluation, it is the deliberate decrease by the central bank in terms of the value of the currency. And then there are three exchange rate systems that we are having: free floating exchange rate system, managed exchange rate system, as well as the fixed exchange rate system. We'll expand further on them. Okay, now let's talk about this. When we started the circular flow model in grade 12, and we expanded at the shape or the picture of the participants there, we mentioned that while the circular flow is a closed model or a closed economy, it had only three participants, namely the households, the government, as well as the firms. It was regarded as a closed economy. But now we realize that the local economy itself sometimes cannot sustain, or the capacity of the country cannot hold the needs and the wants of the population. Therefore, there was a need for us to trade with other countries. And that's why now it is opened to be a four-sector model or an open economy where we include the fourth participant, which is the foreign sector. Then we realize that through that, the currencies of countries are not the same, and even in the value are not their values are not the same. And therefore, there was a market that needed to be established so that there can be a standard value for these currencies. And that market that was established, we call it the foreign exchange market. Okay? The foreign exchange market. Which market is that? It is a market where currencies of different countries are traded. So we need to determine, therefore, factors that will influence the demand for the foreign currency, and also the factors that will influence the supply of the foreign currency. I repeat now, not the domestic currency. Why? It is ours. The South African rands belong to us. We don't demand and we don't require a supply of those because we have them in the country. But we may demand the dollar, we may demand the pound, we may demand the yen, and that may also be supplied to us. So we need to determine what are those factors that causes a demand for the foreign currency as well as the supply of the foreign currency, not the domestic currency, because it is ours, we own it, we have it. So those are the analysis that we need to take here, grade 12s. I repeat, South Africa belongs to us. Which currency are we using? ZAR or the rand? Can we demand rands? No. Can we be supplied with rands? No, because it belongs to us, we have it. But the other currencies, such as the dollar, we demand it. The pound, we demand it. And also it can be supplied to us. But we need to check what would cost us to be supplied with and what would cost us to demand these foreign currencies and not the domestic currency, therefore. Okay, so let's look at the demand factors. I know that you are writing with me to say demand factors for foreign exchange. It can easily be a 2-mark question. It can easily be an 8-mark question where we say discuss the demand factors or discuss the supply factors for the foreign exchange. Okay, so here we're saying we will go to the foreign exchange market to demand the foreign currency while we are importing goods from other countries. So importing of goods constitute a demand factor for foreign currency. I'm going to make an example. I'm a household and I live in South Africa, but I see this nice sneaker on the internet, or I want to bring it into South Africa. It is not expressed in rands, it is expressed in dollars. Therefore, for me to transact, it means I must go to the foreign exchange market, exchange the rands into dollars. Therefore, I demand the dollars for me to be able to buy that sneaker. Then also we are saying payment for services from the foreign countries. I need an engineer from America to come and work in South Africa. that engineer cannot charge me in rents because they don't know the value of rents, but they can only charge me in US dollars. It means for me to pay for their services, I must exchange the rents into dollars. So I will go to the foreign exchange market and demand the dollars so that I can pay that engineer who's in America, therefore. Okay? The other one is we talk to the issue of buying of shares in other countries. Here, it's the same understanding, or it is the same concept to say if I want to invest in an American company, that American company can tell us to say one share, it is sold at X amount of dollars, not at X amount of rents. So as a South African citizen or as a South African person, I will go to the foreign exchange market, demand the dollars so that I can buy shares in that American company. Also, tourists that spend money overseas or tourists traveling to the United States for that matter will make United States a standard country at the moment. Okay, so when these tourists from South Africa go to the United States, they will have to exchange the rents that they have into what? Into dollars, so that traveling can be easy and spending can be easy in that foreign country. That's what makes it a demand factor for foreign exchange. Okay, another one, I would have acquired loan from a friend in the United States, or I would have acquired loans from a bank in the United States or in the World Bank. South Africa as a country would have acquired loans there. They don't pay that in rents. They pay that in dollars. So where will they get the dollars? They will go to the foreign exchange market and demand the dollars for payment of the debt, therefore. Okay. This is what our understanding there for grade 12. Demand factors. Where would you go? Why would you, as a South African citizen, or as the South Africa as a whole, why would we go to the foreign exchange market? We would go there to demand the foreign currency or the dollar for us to import goods to South Africa, for us to pay for services that are rendered by foreign countries, and buying shares in those countries, tourists from South Africa going outside, or as well as repayment of debt. That is the demand factor, therefore. Okay. The opposite there, it is also true, which says the supply factors of foreign exchange. In that side, we said it is for us to import goods, and then on the other side is when we are exporting goods. Okay. We've got industries, we have established industries in South Africa, but now it is well known globally in a global market because of international trade as well as globalization, therefore. So when we take our goods to other countries, those countries do not buy using rents. They buy using their own currency. But that currency comes to us as South Africa. Hence, we are saying now it is a supply factor to us. They are supplying us with their own currency as South African. So when we export goods to them, we get their foreign currency, therefore. Okay? Then furthermore, providing services to foreign countries. Obviously, as a South African person, I don't know how much would I charge per dollar. I will charge per rent. It means if someone says, as an engineer or as a teacher, if someone will say, no, I want your services in the United States, I will tell them that I want million rent. That is that. So it means for them to get the rents, they will have to supply us with the dollars. They will have to come to the foreign exchange market having what? Dollars. So they supply us with those dollars, and in exchange, they get the rents so that payment can be possible. Therefore, okay? As well as, remember, we have invested in a foreign country, or we bought shares in an American company. So what would we do there? If they want to pay dividends to a South African person, in my account, not dollars are going to clock in, or if I receive an email, it might be sent to say you are receiving so much. I would have to exchange that into the rents. But I would have been supplied with the dollars, therefore. Then we exchange that. Okay? Expenditure by foreign tourists. Americans, they come to South Africa for a certain event, maybe leisure or business, or they come to tour and see the Rainbow Nation for that matter. So when they come here, they don't come already having the rent. They don't have it. It's not their domestic currency. Their domestic currency is dollars. So they will be coming into South Africa having what? The dollars. They are supplying us with those dollars. We give them the rents. Then they spend it locally. In that way, we benefit. The dollars, I know the question that you're asking is that where are the dollars going when they're supplying us? We keep them in reserves in the foreign exchange market, no, with the Reserve Bank. That time when they need to go to America, we exchange now. They take dollars and go to the United States, as well as raising of new loans in the foreign countries. When we go and say, as a country as South Africa, we need around 500 billion. Americans cannot say, here is 500 billion US dollars. We say we're going to need rents, but they will bring us a certain amount of money, and then they go to the foreign exchange market, determine how much is it, and then they supply it to us. In that way, we are saying whenever we borrow money from an American company, those people will give us their dollar, and then we'll exchange it into rents. So those are the supply factors there for credit. Charles, if you put them into two, where we say discuss the supply factors as well as the demand factors, of which can be very broad, but take it as an 8-mark question where we look at the demand factors as well as the supply factors. The demand factors are an opposite of the supply factors. Supply factors here, we say it is when we export goods to America. We have the goods, we give them, they give us the dollars. It's a supply factor. And South African person offering a service in America, they supply that person with dollars in the foreign exchange market, receiving dividends as well as expenditure by Americans in South Africa for tourism purposes, therefore, or also borrowing new funds. That is the supply factor of foreign exchange grade 12s. Okay. Now, most of us do watch news, see this on the phones, and especially on the communities and everything, where we check the value of the currency and its impact on economic growth and development. Remember, here in economics, we are just looking at how does it affect us. And then we're also going to need it when we do indicators in under social as well as economic indicators. But under economic indicators there, you've got what we call foreign trade. And under foreign trade, there are two things that you look at there. You look at the exchange rate as well as the terms of trade. That's what you look at. But your understanding would be, you need to understand the two concepts first: appreciation and depreciation of the domestic currency and its impact, therefore, on the country as a whole, right? And we fully understand that they work indirect to each other. As one country currency depreciates, the other country's currency appreciates. Okay. So I want us to look at something here in a very short understanding. And we are saying we need to compare the rand against the dollar, where it was yesterday and today, knowing that we cannot go back to yesterday. So we can only compare today with what happened yesterday. Okay. So here we are saying, when we look at yesterday, the value of the rand against the dollar was 17 rand 40. It means to buy $1, yesterday you would have required 17 rand 40. And today to buy $1, you require 15 rand 60. So in 1 minute, I want you to tell me if the rand has appreciated or depreciated, starting now. Okay, 1 minute, starting now. I'm more interested, welcome back, grade 12s. I'm more interested to check what is it that you've written. Um, uh, if I was a flyer, I would check there and check what is it that you've written. But I know that if you are pairing, you can check with your peer to say what has happened here. And remember, grade 12s here, we are not comparing the dollar against the rand, but we are comparing the what? The rand against the dollar. So you need to tell me if the rand against the dollar has appreciated or depreciated. So yesterday, to buy $1, it required 17 rand 40, but today to buy $1, it requires 15 rand 60. Now, the final answer there is that the rand has appreciated against the dollar. Okay, the rand has appreciated against the dollar. If you wrote that, we can clap hands for you to say, if you were to analyze this for 2 marks or for 1 mark, you got that in the bag. This is one of the hanging fruits that we are talking about at grade 12 here. Okay, so we'll put that into application as well as understanding. So our aim as a country is to have an exchange rate value where at least $1 is equivalent to 1 rand, a ratio of 1:1. Or if better, the value of the rand should be more than the dollars. Then I would be saying we are okay. But for now, we should fight to a point where $1 is equivalent to 1 rand. What am I saying here, economists? I'm referring to, because we are in relation to the consumer goods as well as capital goods, as well as the well-being of economic growth of a country, so that we can achieve the 5 macroeconomic objectives. And one of those is the impact of currency depreciation and currency appreciation. So what I'm saying is that if we see one pair of sneakers in the market or in the internet being expressed as $250, it should actually mean that I need to pay how much? 250 rand. That's it. Then we would be saying that the rand is at the point where we want it to be. Then it's easy for us to trade fairly so. But I shouldn't be going to the foreign exchange market first to go and determine how much is $1 to the rands, then therefore how much am I going to pay in rands when I need to see a sneaker of 250. Okay, so remember we said the rand moved from 17 rand to 15 rand 60. In this case, we said the rand has appreciated. Let us do a simple calculation here. Yesterday, if you were to buy this sneaker, it was going to cost you 4,350. Ceteris paribus, creditors. All things being the same. We're not looking at import duty tax here. We are not looking at insurances, but we are just looking at a normal exchange rate value here. Okay, let's just put it that way. So you are going to pay around 4,350. But today, you appreciate it better. Look at the term that I'm using there, grade 12s. Today, you appreciate it better that you waited, because now you're going to be paying 3,400. It means you are paying less today as compared to yesterday. So what does that tell us? When is it more cheaper to buy the sneaker? Was it yesterday or today? The answer is today. It is more cheaper to buy the sneakers. Now let's find the logic about this currency depreciation and currency appreciation. I still repeat, when I put this clause, you are domestic. It means you look at the rand against the dollar. You look at the South African rand against the United States value, not the other way around. Unless if the question asks you, what happened to the value of dollars against the rand? And then you tell us the dollar has depreciated while the rand has appreciated. But in a normal analysis, we look at the rand and we compare it to the dollars. And then we can tell whether it has appreciated or has depreciated. Okay, so what does that mean? I usually say, you put it as if like it's a ranking of these currencies. Let's take you back to class, a normal class, grade 12s. Term 1, you find yourself in position 60. Okay? Term 2, you find yourself in position 20. You were at position 60 in term 1, now you are in position 20. Are you appreciating what you see or not? surely everyone will be saying, I'm appreciating what I see because I've worked well. I was at number 60, now I'm at number 20. It means you are increasing as time goes on. You are appreciating what you are seeing as time goes on. Same applies with the currencies. Furthermore, term 2, you're at position 20. Now in term 3, you are at position 5. You've moved 15 steps up. So that says to us, you have appreciated even much further because you kept on increasing. So that's how the currencies work in relation to each other. The numbers swap. From 100 to 1, it's currency appreciation. From 1 to 100, it's currency depreciation. Don't know if I'm making sense here. It says if you are moving you are at 17 rand, now you are at 15 rand. You are appreciating. You move to 12 rand, to 6 rand, 3, 1, up until where 1 is to 1. So that tells us that the more the currency moves from the bigger values to the smaller values, the domestic currency, the more it is appreciating. That means it is increasing. So to understand it, take it as if like it's currency ranking. Position 60, position 20. This is good. Position 20, position 5. This is really, really good because you are achieving your goal, which is you want to see yourself at position 1, of which we also want to see a value or a point where $1 is equivalent to 1 rand. So the more it moves away from 1, the more we lose power, the more we lose value. But the more it moves towards 1, the more we gain power, the more we gain value, the more currency appreciation. I hope this makes sense, grade 12, wherever that we are. Okay. Okay. Another example is this one. And then you tell me the rand against the dollar. When you compare yesterday and today, tell me if the rand has appreciated or depreciated. May I please give you another 1.5 minutes, 1 minute and 30 seconds, just to check if now we understand the concepts. I know we're gonna clap and say we've got this one. Okay, starting now. Welcome back. Therefore, grade 12s. And I know this is what you said when I gave you the question. You said, lunch bar. There is my 1 mark. So these are the hanging fruits. As long as you pay attention to the question, you underline like the way I did, because I made it easy for you by underlining what is it that it is required so that you can meet the requirements of the question. Therefore, you said, this one is easy. Okay, yesterday the rand against the dollar was 14 rand 85, and then today we know that it is 15 rand 60. Okay, the rand has depreciated, so I can give you marks for that and say, yeah, 1 mark is in the bag on this one. You've done well on the first mark. It means even when we ask you to briefly describe the concept depreciation, because already you've got this 1 mark, which is the hanging fruit, you know what is depreciation. You're going to say that depreciation is the loss of value of the domestic currency against the other. Okay. All right. Remember, I said the more it moves away from 1, it is depreciating. But if it goes towards 1, it is appreciating. We like what we are seeing. That is the ranking that we are having. Okay. Right. Still remember that our aim is to see a point where 1 US dollar is equivalent to 1 rand. Okay. So the more it moves away, it is depreciating. Remember a small calculation. Yesterday, you would have paid 3,712 rand and 50 cents to purchase a sneaker. Ceteris paribus, all things being the same. Or if you waited for today, you'd pay 3,900. So you would have bought the sneaker yesterday as compared to today. Therefore, you don't like what you are seeing, means it is depreciation of the currency. The rand has lost value today against the dollar. So that's our understanding here, grade 12s. Okay. So here's another ways that we confuse these terms. The decreasing part of it and the increasing part of it. The rent moving from 15 rand to 17 rand does not mean that it is increasing. It is actually decreasing because of the monetary value that you're going to require more rents now to buy the dollar, unlike before. But if the rent moves from 17 rand to 15 rand, it is actually increasing. Why? Because it is gaining value. So we need to take it into that consideration. Okay. Application of the graphs. 1 mark question, before you can even look at anything, they ask you, what exchange rate system is used in the graph above? The answer is what? It is the free floating exchange rate system. Remember we said market forces, demand and supply. It's not managed, it is not fixed. There is no government intervention. So 1 mark here, 1 mark market forces, free floating exchange rate system. When you look at the forces of demand and supply, they can even ask you, what was the original exchange rate in the graph above? We understand that the original exchange rate value, it is 18 rand there. You look at the original demand curve as well as the original supply curve with original E there. It means it was 18 rand, the original exchange rate value. Quantity demanded of dollars, it is 150. I still repeat, grade 12s, this is not the issue of rands here. It is the issue of the foreign exchange or the foreign currencies. We cannot say the domestic currency because it's ours, it belongs to us. Okay? So we're going to be looking at the shift in the demand curve. A decrease in the demand for US dollars in South Africa will cause the demand curve to shift from D2 to D1. You can see the shift in there. Okay? And the exchange rate increases to 15 rand. Now one will be asking, why is there saying it's increasing while it was from 18 rand to 15 rand? How is that an increase? Remember the ranking? It was at its lowest. You required $18 to buy required 18 rand to buy 1 US dollar. Now you require 15 rand to buy 1 US dollar. Tomorrow you may require 10. So you are going towards our goal now, where we want to see 1 US dollar being equivalent to 1 rand. So it has increased to 15 rand, therefore. Okay. And okay, I've mentioned that we require less rands to buy 1 US dollar. And when this occurs, we say in South Africa, the rand is said to have appreciated or said to have what? Gained value against the dollar. Why? Because yesterday you had required 18 rand, but now you require only 15 rand to buy the US dollars. But we see that quantity demanded of dollars there has decreased from 152 to 100. And a new point is formed at point E1. That is just the graph there. You can be given a graph to say, interpret the graph. For 1 mark, the question would be saying, identify the original exchange rate value. Your answer is 18 rand, what we have mentioned. For another mark would be saying, which foreign currency is depicted above? Answer is the US dollars, because they are telling us this is the market for US dollars. Then the second mark would, the middle mark for 2 marks will be saying, briefly describe the concept exchange rate. It is the rate at which one country's currency is exchanged for another. Then the other questions follow. The last question will be saying, interpret what has happened to the rent or the value of the rent from the graph against the dollar. So that is the interpretation that you're gonna tell us there. Okay, tell us the original was how much, when the demand for dollars decreased from 150 to 100, it causes the demand to shift from D to D1, which also caused the value of the rent to shift from 18 rand to 15 rand, and therefore the rand has appreciated against the dollar. Your 4 marks in the back, 10 out of 10. Okay. Another scenario would be the shift in the demand curve, but in the opposite direction now, unlike the first one. The first one we saw a decrease in the demand for dollars. But here, if more South Africans want to go to America, or more South Africans buy goods from America, it means there's going to be more demand for the US dollars. Okay. So when that happens, we see a shift from 100 to 150, where we see an increase in the demand curve from D2 to D1. Okay. And in this case, we say the exchange rate or the rand against the dollar seems to be decreasing from 15 rand to 18 rand. You see the case now. Even when you are watching the news at home and your parents are surprised when you are angry at this, they'll be saying, no, but it's good. It was 15 rand, now it's 18 rand. Now you're going to tell them to say, an increase or this movement does not mean it favors us. It actually favors the dollar against us. So we don't want to see this arrow, especially the red one, that shows an upward trend. Now, we want to see a green arrow that shows that the value of the rand against the dollar is appreciating. But this one, where we see the rand was at 15 rand, but it's now 18 rand, it's not good for the South African citizens because of the factors that affect economic growth, especially on importing of goods and services, therefore. Okay? So an increase in the exchange rate means that more rands are required to buy $1. And in this case, we are saying the rand is depreciating. It was 15 rand, we need 3 rand more, which is 18 rand now to buy one US dollar. That is not good. Okay. And we say the rand seems to be losing its value. Okay. But I say, remember the demand reasons for foreign exchange. Why would we as South Africans go to the foreign exchange market demanding the dollar? For what? Importing of goods, payment of those services. So the more we demand the dollar, the more the rand will depreciate. But if we demand less of the dollar, the rand will appreciate. Okay. Let's look at the supply factors, therefore. In this case, where we say an interpretation of the graph first before you can even analyze it. You check that, oh, there's an original demand curve as well as the supply curve at point E there. Okay. Then now you say the original exchange rate, it is 18 rand. Quantity demanded of dollars is 800, right? But now I see a shift in the supply curve, which means there's an increase in the supply curve. Okay, more dollars are coming into South Africa. There's more supply of dollars. So what could have caused that? And what impact does that have on our currency? Okay, yesterday, the rand against the dollar was at 18 rand, but now it is at how much? It is at 15 rand. Before you can even attempt to answer the question, automatically you concluded that the rand against the dollar has appreciated. So if there's a question that will ask you about the value of the rand against the dollar, you have that mark already, or those 2 marks or 4 marks, before you can even attempt the questions by analyzing the graph. So that's how we do it, economists. Analyze the graph or the data response or the information before you can even attempt the questions. But we've seen most of the time, a person starts with the question, then they go to the data response first. You're not going to get all the marks that you want there. Okay. So an increase in the supply of dollars causes the supply curve to shift from S to S1. That's analysis. This can give you 2 marks if you are asked to analyze the graph, which tells us that the rand has shifted or has increased from 18 rand to to 15 rand, that would give you another 4 marks. You would have got 4 out of 6 before you can even tell us what has happened to the rand. And therefore, when this occurs, the South African rand is said to have appreciated against the dollar, or it is said to have gained value against the dollar. That is the analysis, therefore, grade 12s. Okay, then remember the supply reasons for foreign exchange. Why would we go to the foreign exchange market and for Americans to supply us with the foreign exchange market? We are exporting goods, the Americans are coming to South Africa, etc. So those are the supply reasons. So the graph itself, 4 marks, analysis, other 6 marks, it's a win for you. If this is the 10-mark question, you get your 10 out of 10. Okay. Contrary to that, but where we see a decrease in the supply curve now. So that means it means less of dollars are coming into South Africa. So the question would be, if less dollars are coming to South Africa, what is happening to the rands? That could tell us that more rands are going outside now because less dollars are coming into South Africa. It means we are exporting less while we are importing more. There is more of South African tourists going to America than Americans coming into South Africa. Hence, we see a decrease in the supply of dollars. So what will happen to the rand in that case? The question that needs to be asked there. I know that you're already answering that and saying, oh man, I know. If I require more now, I'm no longer requiring 15 rand, I'm requiring 18 rand. I don't like what is happening here. This is not good for me. And I'm losing value in that case. I think we are done here. Okay. So we see a decrease from 15 rand to 18 rand as there's a decrease in the supply of dollars. So the rand cost to the US dollars is increasing. And in that way, we are saying the rand seems to be depreciating or seems to be losing value. We're going to require more of the rands to purchase $1 US. Okay. Now, let's put it into aspects and the impact that it does have on the economy. Remember, this is an understanding of how does the currency works and its impact on consumer goods as well as capital goods. Okay. Appreciation for 2 marks. It refers to an increase in the value of the domestic currency in relation to the foreign or other currencies. Thank you. What would happen, therefore, if the rand appreciates? More goods can be purchased from the USA, meaning imports are increasing. So that is also bad now, because when we talk only about these imports, there are 2 types of goods that we need to consider here, grade 12s. Let's look at the consumer goods as well as the capital goods. Consumer goods are the ones that goes to the final goods, the consumption for you and I. But the capital goods are for the factories as well as the firms. And the technology, therefore, that is required by the South African citizens of South African firms for production purposes. And if the rand appreciates, it will be cheaper for firms to buy capital goods such as equipment and machinery from the United States to South Africa, which is good for the country because it will reduce the cost of production and it will benefit us at the end of the day. Okay, but on the opposite side, when the rand appreciates now, consumers tend not to favor local goods, buy imported goods. So what will happen to support of the local businesses? It declines. Unemployment starts to kick in on the other side. No, now what am I saying now? So you look at it in 2 ways. Capital goods, it's good. But consumer goods, appreciation of the rand, it's not good on the other side. Again, there are South Africans, we have never even traveled within their own country. We have never traveled within the 9 provinces. But because of the favorable exchange rate, we see more of South Africans traveling to America. So there's an inflow of funds now. The rents are going outside the country. Why? Because it's cheaper for them to travel. They can move easily. The rand has appreciated against the dollar now. Okay, so which is not good on the other side. Consumers, on the other side, favorable. They've got a variety to choose from. Remember, it's cheap for them to buy imports. Once I mentioned that they will favor local goods less. They will be saying, I've been looking for this sneaker, Air Force, but I don't like the one that is produced in South Africa. It is cheaper for me and I can afford to buy in the American market. Then they go and support the foreign countries. Then they forget about the domestic countries. Hence, we said the support for local businesses decrease. Okay. Then also, we look at a deficit or a decrease in the balance of payment, where we say because imports are more, which is more money going out, and exports are less, which means less money coming into South Africa. In the current account, we'll have a deficit. Why? Because more money went outside when we are buying imports, while there's less money that came in when we're exporting goods to other countries. Hence, the deficit in the balance of payment. Okay. Let's look at in terms of depreciation of the domestic currency. We said it's a decrease in the value of the domestic currency against other currencies. It's good. Exports will increase, which will become cheaper for the United States. It means more Americans will buy from us. They supply us with the foreign exchange. That's favorable to us. Okay? Right. But, and it's also good because consumers will support local businesses, irrespective of durability and something. Because in my class, when we talk to someone will be saying, but South African products are not quality. Hence, we buy the United States or outside. Or they are not attractive that much. We need something that is attractive. But currency depreciation on consumer goods, it is good because they will support local production. They will buy locally because it's expensive for them to buy in other countries. However, currency depreciation, grade 12, it is bad for capital goods. Remember those equipment and those machineries that we need in the production process? The technology that we need to export, that we need to import to our country? That technology becomes expensive now because the rand has lost value, which will in turn now make the cost of production expensive. The final goods and services will be expensive because the rand has depreciated. So if the rand loses value on capital goods, it is really not good, grade 12. But on consumer goods, it is good because we're going to buy locally, support local production, demand locally is going to increase, and when demand locally increases, more people are employed, economic growth increases, favorable on the other side. Okay, and there's a decrease in the balance of payment. So that is the understanding and the application of currency appreciation and currency depreciation. Said understanding, classify it into two goods, the consumer goods as well as capital goods. Don't think for yourself to say, I'm a consumer, everything is good for me, or I'm a consumer, everything is bad for me. Look at all angles of the economy and the impact of this currency appreciation and currency depreciation on South Africa as a whole. Okay, grade 12. Okay, the types of exchange rate systems we have mentioned is just an expansion on what is what there. Okay, of which we mentioned that this is the exchange rate system which are or is allowed to float freely as determined by the pure forces of demand and supply. In this case, it happens where there is no government or central bank intervention. So it happens on its own here on the forces of demand and supply. The market is purely there. That is the understanding that we need to have for 4 marks. So, okay, free floating or flexible, keyword, forces of demand and supply. I said to you, when you see a graph of foreign exchange in an exam, and then they ask you for 1 mark, which exchange rate system is applied here? Answer is free floating exchange rate system or flexible exchange rate system. What would you be seeing there? You would be seeing demand and supply of the foreign exchange system. Okay, right. So foreign exchange market is busy at all times. It happens sometimes happens on the banks, it happens on the internet. For example, when I'm at home, I can still buy something from the United States. I don't require, it's not a requirement for me to go to the bank. But sometimes if I'm a citizen wanting to go to the United States, obviously there I need to physically exchange that. I may go to the airport, I may go to the bank. They will give me the foreign exchange. I will give them the currency that I'm having, which is the rand there. And we are saying this exchange rate system, it is used in South Africa. So another 1 mark question, another hanging fruit. Which exchange rate system is used in South Africa? Answer, free floating exchange rate system. You see how we get all those marks, or flexible exchange rate system. And this is associated with appreciation as well as what? Depreciation. Okay. Recap of this, 8 marks. Explain or discuss free floating exchange rate system. It is an exchange rate system that works purely on the forces of demand and supply, or on the market forces. This exchange rate system happens because there is no government intervention. Okay? It is currently used in South Africa, where the currency appreciates and depreciates on its own without government intervention. You get your 8 marks there. The second one, it is the fixed exchange rate system, or sometimes it is the pegged exchange rate system. You peg it against something. This is a system in which the exchange rate is officially declared and fixed by the what? By the government. What do we mean by that? To maintain stability in fixed exchange rate system, the government buy the foreign currency when it appreciates, and also sell it when it depreciates. It means if the dollar loses its value, why must we keep it? Or why must we have it? We sell it because it will not benefit us in any form. But when it appreciates, it is bought in that manner. Okay. This one, we said it is not determined by the market forces, but according to the government. And this system, it is measured or determines in terms of the gold, therefore. Okay. Here's an example. I know sometimes we wonder to say, how do we keep this fixed? For example, we can measure to say $1 will be equivalent to 100 grams of gold. The value of rent, it is 5 grams of gold. Then let's convert this now into currencies. Remember, a dollar, it's stronger than the rand. So if $1 in terms of gold, I will need how many grams? I will need 100 grams. But for a rand, I will only need what? 5. Okay? So in terms of $1, therefore, to determine how much will I require, I will say the 100 grams of gold divide by the 5 grams of gold, so that I will be saying that for me to purchase $1, I will keep it at fixed at how much? At 20 rand. That tells us that even on the other side, when the currency depreciates and appreciates, we'll still keep it pegged at how much? At 20 rand. That is the fixed amount here, because it's determined per gold. It happens in a very short period of time, but it can still be changed as the country gets favored or does not get favored based on economic conditions. Let me put it that way, great students. Okay, the last one in terms of exchange rate systems, we're looking at the managed floating exchange rate system. This one is also known as the dirty exchange rate system, where we look at a mixture of a flexible exchange rate system and a fixed exchange rate system. It is managed. Okay, right. So in other words, it refers to a system in which the foreign exchange is determined by the free market forces, and which also it is influenced by the intervention of the central bank. Now, let me say this one because in the news you'll get the currency manipulation and everything. This one has nothing with that, but this one has to do with the movement and buying of the currency, where we look at where it is in terms of the economic conditions. Therefore, the central bank intervenes by buying and selling of the foreign exchange currencies in an attempt to stabilize the exchange rate movements in case of extreme appreciation or in case of extreme depreciation. So we look at that. I'll make an example on the other side. If the economic conditions of a country are not favorable, so to a point that the rent depreciates to a certain aspect in such a way that it is difficult to even buy these capital goods from other countries. It means there can be an intervention by the central bank to at least appreciate the currency to a certain value so that it's cheaper for us to buy from other countries. But on the other side, if there's more favorable conditions where the rent appreciates extremely to a point that there is no support for local production at all because all South Africans can now support to buy from other countries where the rent against the dollar is fully appreciated. Then there can be an intervention by the government where they depreciate the value of the currency up to certain limits, where at least we are discouraged from buying from other countries. So the two ways that are associated there, it is the issue of revaluation as well as devaluation. Deliberate action taken by the central bank to increase or decrease the value of the currency. So under managed, two ways there, revaluation and devaluation. While on the other side, which is flexible or free floating, two ways there, it is depreciation and appreciation of the currency. And then we've got the other one that is fixed or that is pegged, therefore. Okay, so here we've got our activity grade 12, which was taken from this year's prelim exam. It comes from the north. And we are looking at that. Then I'm going to allow you at least 7 minutes to answer the questions there for grade 12. Remember that the first thing that you need to do, read the data response, analyze it before you can even attempt to answer the questions. Okay, your 7 minutes starts now. Welcome back, grade 12s. Hopefully, we're going to get this 10 out of 10 as the marks as part of the revision for our exams. Okay, so first we're going to read this data response just for it to be familiar with us. We are saying weak rent tourist magnet. Okay, so that heading already speaks volume. Weak rent act as a tourist magnet. It means it will attract tourists as their dollars goes much further than back home. The rand weakened against the US dollar in 7 of the past 10 years, but has also been a massive uptick in the tourism due to weaker currency. What does that mean? More visitors coming to South Africa means more revenue entering the country, more employment opportunities, or more opportunities for employment. Although it will take some time, the effect of the currency devaluation will ripple there or through the economy and have a knock-on effect throughout the country. Okay, so that tells us that there is currency depreciation, but on the other side, remember we said, think of it this way. It is not always bad when the currency depreciates. Also, it is not always good. So there's also good part of it, and there's also the bad part of it. Especially on the capital goods, it is bad when it depreciates, but on the consumer goods, it is bad. It is good. Yeah, it is good on the other side. So let's look at the questions. Therefore, the first one was saying, identify the economic concept relating to the deliberate decrease in the value of the currency in terms of another. The answer there is devaluation. It is there, grade 12. So that's our first 1 mark in the back. Okay. Name one effect of international trade. All right. I always put it in this form to say it is SMAC, which is specialization, followed by mass production, efficiency, and the last one, it is globalization. Those are part of effects of international trade. There are etc. More employment, etc. There's so many more that you can talk about that effect of international trade. Number 3, therefore, I say briefly describe the concept exchange rate. We started with this. Also, this one, you cannot leave it blank, grade 12 here, where we said it is the rate at which one country's currency is exchanged for another. So up to here, we expect this. It's 40% out of the 10 mark questions that you are always asked in a data response question, which means up until here, we are saying at least get these 4 marks. But you may find it difficult if terminology is not part of the part where you study for it. And also one word answers, you might not get those. But we are saying if you practice well, each topic you divide it into some components that are so easy to understand, as well as these economic concepts. So these 4 marks are always in the bag for us. Number 4 says, what is the benefit of a surplus in the current account of balance of payment? So now you would understand that balance of payment record a transaction of movement of goods between different countries. So if it's a surplus, it tells us that the country exported more goods than imports coming into the country. Hence, we are saying the surplus on the balance of payments means that the country has more money for imports. Okay. It can also mean that the country's currencies can be undervalued. Then the advantage is that the country's currency is therefore much higher than it is suggested, where we say we get more of the rands than the dollars. It's a surplus for us. And the country does not have to borrow money either. We are having money, therefore, in the country where we said there's less imports coming in, but there's more exports that are going outside the country. Okay. The last one. How will an increase in demand for dollars? You see how is the question asked? How will an increase? The question is not asking you in the other way. It does not say what will happen to the value of the currency. It's set on the other side now. But it says, how will an increase in demand for dollars impact the value of the rand? So rather than starting on the value side of it when we're explaining the graph, you'll start on the movement first of the curves, the demand curve as well as the supply curve. Sometimes the graph is not given, but you can draw the graph and say, okay, this is what I'm having at the moment. It is the demand for dollars, okay, and the supply of dollars on the other side. So what are they telling us here? At the moment, we are saying it is 15 rand, and then the quantity demanded there it is 100. Okay, so they are telling us that there is an increase in the demand for dollars. So that tells us that the demand will shift from D now to D1. That tells us we want now 150 of the dollars, but look at that. How much now are you requiring? You require 3 rand more. It is now 18 rand. So what has happened to the value of the rand if there's an increase in the demand for dollars? Okay. So we'll put that. Let's look at that again. We'll draw it here and say in a full format, supply of dollars, demand for dollars. At the moment, before government intervention, which is E, how much is that? It's 15 rand. We demand 100. And this side, we know that it is the rand against the dollar. And this side is the quantity of dollars, that currency that we are dealing with. Then the question says, what happened to the dollars? Increased the demand, not supply. Okay, so there's a movement that increased from D to D1. Then a new equilibrium is formed there. We fully understand that we no longer demand 100, but we demand 150. Okay, we have not yet answered the question because we need to determine the value of the rand, and we can only see on the exchange rate side of it here. Okay, so now it is how much here? It is 18 rand, therefore. Then it's easy for you to answer the questions. The demand for dollars will increase the price of dollars, which means more rands will be needed to purchase what? The dollars. We can see it from the graph. There's an increase in the demand for dollars, which is good, but it requires more rands, therefore, to buy the dollars. Okay. So that is the understanding that we are having there, grade 12. If the rand decreases from probably 19 rand to 20 rand, the rand will lose its value against the dollar. We said we require more. Therefore, this will decrease or depreciate the price of the rand. I've done that in terms of drawing. You can just draw that and answer. Remember here, you were given a data response question, which is the scenario where there was no graph. But we still accept that let there be an application from the way you understood the graphs. You can also put values here, grade 12. We allow you. You don't have to remember the 19 rand and the 20 rand. You don't have to remember the 15 rand as well as the 18 rand. You can use your own values as long as you'll be meeting the requirements of the question. That's what we are giving you for the final exam. Okay. Then we've got another activity here that was taken from the Free State prelim exam. It was question 2.3 there. Okay, of which is another data response of which we ask you. But this one, because we are familiar with the previous one, we can only take this one in 5 minutes. And that 5 minutes starts now. Grade 12s, welcome back. And let's look at this activity. It is still under the foreign exchange market. And remember, we said it was taken from the Free State Prelim 2024, questions 2.3. It says, Johannesburg, May 2023, a sell-off in the South African rand and bonds gathered a pace on Thursday as reports that the South African had provided arms to Russia spoke to investors already concerned about the economic impact of rippling power cuts. And then the rate touched a low of 19 rand 33 cents against the dollar. That means down as much as 2.4% on the day and hit its weakest since the record low set in April 6 of 2020 during the early days of COVID. Okay, so that's a scenario that is there. They are bringing us to a current economic issue that was happening around 2023 May. So we therefore need to answer the questions therefore. Okay, the one says, give the exchange rate on the day 11 May. How much was it? The answer there was 19 rand 32.50. So these are 1 mark questions. You're gonna get this. It's that hanging fruit that we're saying here, grade 12. Then another question says to us, did the rand, if we look at back, did the US dollar experience a loss or a gain in the value in 1 May? That says that if the rand loses value, the rand gains value. So that's how it works. It works in an opposite direction. When the rand hit its rock bottom, and then the dollar appreciates on the other side. And check the question here correctly. They are not asking you about the rand. They are asking you about the other currency. But for you to understand that is to understand what is happening domestically. You can easily answer what is happening on the foreign exchange market. Then before I can even continue, surprisingly is that grade 12s, on these questions where we even ask you to choose, you leave it blank. We are asking you here, did the dollar experience a loss or a gain? You find when we are marking it's a blank. So what would we say, if you can't remember, why can't you guess? I'm still referring also to section A on multiple choice questions, where you leave it blank while we give you 4 options. If you can't remember, one of those options is correct. You may never know your luck on the other side. Could be 2 marks there. So on this one, has the dollar gained or lost value? Okay, we understand that it has gained value there. Briefly describe the concept appreciation. Okay, this one you can hear it even the way it's pronounced, appreciation. It is the gaining of value by the currency or the gaining of the value of the domestic currency in relation to another or under a free floating exchange rate system, or when the rand gains value compared to others without government intervention or purely to market forces. That is appreciation. Okay. Any other way that we put it, as long as we're going to be saying when the rand becomes stronger or increases therefore. Okay. Then 4.2.4, explain the value or purpose of the balance of payment. So the balance of payment serves as the purpose of recording the value of the country's transaction against or with the rest of the world. The value of transaction is given in terms of the currency of a country to check to say how much it is recorded in the balance of payment in terms of value terms. How much of value did we import? How much of value did we export? And what we have in terms of the terms of trade or the trade balance in the balance of payment against inflows and outflows in the financial account, as well as the portfolio investment and direct investment. Those are expressed in value terms. Okay. Therefore, the South Africa's balance of payment is therefore expressed in rands, cannot be expressed in dollars. We need to know in the South African concept. Okay. Then the last one. What effects do terms of trade have on the economy? That's a concept there. Remember I said these concepts are also applicable on term when we do the indicators under the foreign trade. Terms of trade, if it improves, the following effects take place. Number one, it brings an improvement in the social welfare of a country because we will need fewer exports to buy the same imports. It means more exports and less imports on the other side. Okay. Furthermore, ensures an increase in export prices that will generate more inflow of revenue. Goods go out, money comes into the country. Ensures a decrease in import prices that will generate less outflow of money. So here, in terms of trade, refers to the ratio of the country's exports against the country's what? Imports. That is terms of trade. So if it improves, the follow will favor us as a country. But what happens if now there's a deterioration in terms of trade? It brings a decline in the social welfare, the opposite of what we said. Okay? It brings a decline in the social welfare of the country because more exports will be needed to buy the same exports. When you calculate it, you'll find the value, if it was measured in terms of 100, and then it will have been decreased to be less than 100. That tells us that the terms of trade has deteriorated, or there's a decrease, therefore, in the terms of trade. This results in a decrease in export prices, thereby generating less inflow of revenue or of income to the country. And we are saying lastly there, this results in an increase in import prices and therefore more outflow going out, which is not good because we understand later on the impact therefore would be less economic growth in the country, which will result into less employment in the country. Prices of goods and services will increase and inflation might be there. The currency will depreciate and also there will be less revenue that is collected by the government that is used for social welfare and to achieve economic equity. So those are the effects of what we are having here at grade 12. That being said, we have come to the end of the lesson. Thank you for watching this lesson and we'll see you next time.